Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. In this special edition, we're focusing on menopause, as an estimated 1 billion women will either be menopausal or postmenopause by the year 2030. That is one big chunk of the world's population. So just a reminder, menopause is the time when menstrual periods permanently stop, marking the end of a woman's reproductive life. It typically occurs between the ages of 45 and 55, although the exact timing can vary. Not to mention perimenopause, which can start 10 to 15 years in advance. Yet general knowledge of what it means for those who experience it and how to best treat it is minimal, to say the least. Although menopause is still considered taboo in many parts of the world, attitudes are changing dramatically in the UK, with legislation being discussed and employees now having a legal responsibility to support middle-aged women at work, as Aurore Dupuis and Valentine Erber report.
I felt alone and lost. I didn't know what food I liked anymore. I didn't know what music I liked anymore. I didn't know how I felt anymore. My children said that I'd changed, that I wasn't as loving anymore, I was cold. And that hurt a lot, actually. So, yeah.
4 years ago, Tracy grew more and more anxious. Insomnia, depression. She didn't know that she was actually going through menopause. One day, on her way to work, she could no longer cope with the symptoms.
The truth, I didn't want to be here on the earth. If it wasn't for my husband and my family, my director, I wouldn't be here.
It all started when Tracy had a hysterectomy. Her GP, surgeon, nurses, no one warned her that the removal of her uterus would be so debilitating. As a store manager, she struggled with brain fog.
One of the main things was that I was going to lose my job. That's what made me really anxious, because of my age and because going through the menopause changes you as a person.
Under new legislation in the UK, Tracy's symptoms amount to a disability, making her employer legally responsible for her well-being at work.
Morning.
Hey, morning. All right.
Flexible hours, air conditioning, regular one-on-one chats.
Your headache might be because of your menopause.
Tracy's managers have introduced a series of measures to support her.
We should all be equal in the workplace. I think men should understand what women go through. Trying to be as empathetic as a man, as possible.
We as employees want to keep them all here, and we want to make sure that they're happy, because if they're not happy, our customers aren't happy.
Menopause costs the UK economy an estimated 14 million working days per year. 1 in 10 women are even forced to leave their job because of severe symptoms. In a bid to put an end to this trend, Deborah Garlick started training British organisations 7 years ago.
What we're seeing happening in workplaces is actually helping to change the culture, but it can't stop there. We've got to get extra training for our healthcare professionals, and actually menopause is a life skill, so it's important that we make sure that we train up in schools too.
For that, there needs to be a political will. Caroline Harris was the first to address menopause in the British Parliament. She herself was misdiagnosed for 8 years before finding the right treatment. For the Labour MP, menopause affects not only women, but society as a whole.
Marriages break up, suicide increases, domestic violence increases. Some women turn to alcohol, some women turn to drugs, some women turn to online gambling. Many women will end up involved in the criminal justice system because of the menopause.
Caroline Harris has just returned from a UN meeting where she urged the international community to break the stigma around menopause.
So why in 2024 is menopause still seen as such a taboo, and why is the medical profession continuing to fail women on this issue? Joining me now from Seattle in the US is Dr. Kelly Casperson, a urologist, podcaster and author of You're Not Broken. And with me in the studio is Mathilde Neme, a French CEO and co-founder of the app Amina, a digital guide for menopause. Thanks to both of you for your time. Kelly, let me start with you. Why is it that so many doctors continue to fail women in treating menopause, and what does that mean for us, the patient?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So after the Women's Health Initiative dropped in 2002, hormones stopped, menopause care stopped. We have about 2 generations of physicians, physician's assistants who never got any training. And the people who did prescribe before are now retired. So we have a huge physician workforce that never got trained in how to care for menopause.
And Kelly, that goes just beyond how to prescribe HRT. It's about other ways of treating menopause as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's profound changes in our body and things like nutrition, exercise, stress management, and all the other risks that can come up, how to protect our bones, how to protect our hearts. None of this is being taught. In addition, physicians aren't acknowledging women's symptoms as being real. Many people don't think perimenopause exists.
Mathilde, let me bring you in, because at the age of 23, in disgust at seeing how your mother was struggling with the symptoms of menopause, you came up with the idea of devising an app. Why an app?
Because what my mother told me is that what women are lacking is information and a daily companion to help them manage their symptoms like stress management, nutrition, physical activity. And so an app came to my mind because with an app you can provide information and daily support through physical exercise or nutrition or stress management.
And what was she suffering at the time?
She was having joint pain, hot flashes, and basically all the menopause symptoms. And she is a doctor. And even though she is a doctor, she didn't know how to manage her symptoms.
Kelly, when you hear that, that is extraordinary, is it not, that a female doctor herself was struggling with menopause?
I see it all the time in my colleagues that they're suffering and they don't know why. We just simply weren't taught that it exists.
Yet the image of a menopausal woman, Kelly, is that of an elderly grandmother. But you and I know that is far from the truth. Yet does that image stop women in general from talking openly about it?
Yeah, even when I close my eyes and think of a menopausal woman, I'll get a 70-year-old with white hair popping up in my brain. We don't understand how early it happens and that how we treat our health in our early years helps us age well, so we're that vibrant 70-year-old when we get there.
Mathilde, as we saw there in the UK, the country is way ahead, particularly its private sector, when it comes to looking after menopausal women in the workforce. Why is France lagging so way behind?
I think that because in France it's still taboo. And so companies are afraid that they will stigmatize women if they talk about menopause. And I've heard some HR people telling me that they are afraid that if they talk too much about menopause, menopausal women in the workforce will feel that they are stigmatized by the company.
But why would they fear of being stigmatized? That they're too old to be doing their job?
Yes. They are afraid of feeling that they are sick because of the symptoms. They are not capable to work anymore, or that they are too old and they don't master the new technologies and so on. So we hear a lot that, and I'm fighting against it because I want to develop Omena in B2B.
And Kelly, not only are there so many taboos surrounding menopause, but when you talk about women and sex during this time of their lives, that takes it to a whole other new level, doesn't it?
Yes, there are a lot of challenges with female sexuality in midlife. There's a lot going on in midlife. Stress from work, maybe kids are leaving the house, relationship dynamic changes, and our changing bodies and experiences with menopause and the menopause changes. So all of those can add into the complexity of body image, our sexual desire, how much we used to view sex, and what role does it play now where maybe we're not trying to build our family anymore? What's the point of sex in midlife?
You were talking there, Mathilde, about education.
Sure.
And the need to educate women. But it's not just women, it's men as well.
Yes. When we provide in companies conferences about menopause, we try to invite as many men as possible because it's important that they know about it.
What reaction do you get?
Sometimes they're like, and what about andropause? And I'm like, it's not the point. Men have less symptoms, so it's not the point. But yes, it's important that they can hear how menopause can impact the daily life of women.
Kelly, obviously education is so important, and as I said at the beginning of this conversation, nearly 1 billion women are going to reach menopause or be postmenopausal by 2030. So what needs to be done, not just by the medical profession, but by society in general?
I agree. There's so many people, and it's so universal. So I think we really need to start just by normalizing this life experience. If we have the privilege of living this long, we're going to have the privilege of going through menopause. It's a normal body change, like puberty and like pregnancy. So just normalizing the conversation. And some data shows that women bringing it up in the workforce actually shows leadership, that they're speaking about what's going on in their body. So that's one thing we can do. Another thing that physicians can do is bring it up in the clinic. The UK is leading the way by, at age 50, they're supposed to have a mandatory discussion about menopause and the changes and ask women if they need any support.
Kelly, how do we get the message across to women also not to be afraid of menopause?
I think it's really changing the culture. We have forgotten the wisdom of our elders in our modern culture. Women have so much to offer because of their experiences and journey in life, and really reframing getting older as a time to grow and to share your wisdom with everybody.
But it also comes back to sexuality, doesn't it? Which, of course, you're a specialist in, and that idea that somehow you're no longer sexually attractive.
Yeah, there's a lot of stigma in our society about who's allowed to be sexually active, who's allowed to desire sex. And it really creates a need for an observation that we can be sexual our entire lives. We may need some different support or some different tools, but to understand that sexuality is not just for creating families, it's a life experience and a journey you can take all the way to the end.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, so I'd like to thank my guests, Dr. Kelly Casperson from the US, and with me in the studio, Mathilde Neme. And that's all for this edition, but in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you, so do reach out with your suggestions via Facebook, Instagram or X. So until the next show, bye for now.